What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of We Burn Blue. And the season's done. Sharon, man, how you feeling?
I'm kind of scratching my eyes. It was a late one for me. I don't usually stay up for the games, but I figured, if the boys were going to put in a shift last night, I should also do the same. Turns out they kind of screwed me with that. What did you what did you think of the Sunderland game?
Before I go into the Sunderland game, I have to say congratulations to Arsenal. 22 years of waiting. Um, yeah, I had North London forever playing as soon as the City result happened that night, thanks to Nev, as you know. But yeah, in terms of coming to the Sunderland game, man, what a shit show. I don't have anything else to say. What a certified fucking shit show.
Yeah, I thought we were going to just skate past the whole Arsenal winning the title thing, but a begrudging congratulations to all the Arsenal fans who have emerged. Uh, didn't know some of them existed until today, but yeah, absolute. Pardon my French, but yeah, absolute shit show, like you say. Um, I think for me, it was the lack of endeavor for the at least for the first half. Well, the first 50 minutes, basically having to go 2-0 down before individuals started to wake up, right? But as a team, we were pretty much asleep the whole game. And I really don't think we had to be at our absolute best to take a point. I know going into the game that maybe they're thinking, oh, 3 points away at Sunderland. It's even like the top Chelsea teams have always found it tough, right? So maybe it was feeling like a monumental task. But as it turns out, we only needed a point, and they were talking about Europa League. So I don't know. Did you see the same kind of lack of motivation there?
I think there's been a lack of motivation for a really long time. And I mean, there's a set of people, and it's a very strong opinion as well. I think there's merit in it, who are saying, look, it's fine that we did get Europe, considering we needed a rebuild. Well, not we needed, would look like we definitely need one, right? Given the state of the squad. And missing out on Europe gives us the best chance for Alonso coming in, instilling a new identity, getting time to sort of, bake in his philosophy. And I mean, Xabi Alonso, we got to touch on that as well. That's a huge appointment. But in terms of the game and recent form, I think, yeah, there's been a lack of motivation. I think everybody is just doing, it looks like 11 individuals playing their own game instead of a cohesive unit. And I mean, I just don't fathom how you set up with a three at the back system and you put your arguably three of your best centre backs. I mean, there's lots of caveats to that discussion. Cole was just coming back. Fofana is on paper supposed to be one of our best. Harto's had a really good run recently, but you put three, three of your best centre backs. You have Malo Gusto, who has been defensively has been crap pretty much the whole season. Cucurella, who has been running himself ragged and has had good moments, but has also had bad. And you put these like three at the back, so you have five defenders, and you still manage to get outrun and get played behind so often. Like I felt like I saw that so much. I'm like, this is just more of the same shit. And I mean, you can tell I'm really jaded by this one.
No, you seem your same optimistic self. No, I think everybody's taken a big hit last night. I don't usually, like I said, I don't usually watch the live games. And I like watching it in a replay form because you can skip through all of the nonsense, like the time wasting or the quote unquote injuries and whatever it is that Chelsea slash other teams try to do to waste time, right? And then the other thing is you can pause things, slow things down to understand more from the tactical perspective of what we're trying to do. I have no idea, right? And I don't know whether this is because I watched it live or not. I have no idea what we were trying to do defensively. And you could see for the full 90 that whether it was Cucurella or anybody playing on the left wing, they had no idea whether to drop with their man or track the midfielder on the inside, or you could see there are a few plays where Cucurella actually just turns around and watches runners go past him. And then you're looking at him realize that the runners are being handed over to Enzo Fernandez. So it was funny to see that in real time. And yeah, I mean, McFarlane has to take the fall for that. I can't blame him too much. I'm not going to be too harsh, but that's where a manager comes in, right? You see that in the first 5-10 minutes of the game that, defensively, we haven't set up correctly. Sunderland were having a lot of time on the ball in their half, but we were trying to press them. But again, we're very poor at pressing. There's very little energy in our press, very little intensity. But also tactically, we had set up with the usual man marking system, and that was being played around very easily, which meant that Xhaka was able to arrive on the ball at the 6th position and then just ping his long balls. Because again, with the high press, our line had shifted up, or let's say our midfield had shifted up, but Sunderland had left enough players forward to push our defensive line back, which meant that there were huge gaps between the defense and midfield, which meant that Brobby, Enzo Lafay, and whoever else, they were able to receive, hold it up, and then suddenly Sunderland have gained like 50, 60 yards just in one pass. So we were failing at both ends of the pitch. And if that would fall to the manager's remit to change the approach. So yeah, I think we really, really suffered, right, from, firstly, it's a lack of motivation. I saw nobody trying to take responsibility to keep the ball. It looked like we were at most playing for a 0-0 draw, which the players should know we can't do that. It doesn't matter if we put 6 at the back or 7 at the back. They don't play well enough defensively to keep a clean sheet. So it looked like that at the start, and then it snowballed because there wasn't a proper manager to handle the situation both mentally and tactically.
Yeah, fair enough. And what do you make of the whole argument against having Europe? Because I was all for it. I mean, I still think that this ownership, these directors have done a really shit job commercially. So even if it's 14 million that we get in the Conference League, that's 14 million more than we would have got, given the current state where we don't have a shirt sponsor and anything. So I think we made those revenues. So for me, it was about revenues. But what do you make of that? Like, what's your thought on losing out of Europe?
I mean, your point on revenue is only partially valid, I think, because it's coming to light that we play in the Conference League or the Europa League, you're probably actually making a loss, even if you win the damn thing. But, Chelsea also have massive, massive expenses at the club, right? Chelsea is a club that is run as a Champions League team. So they have Champions League team expenses. They're not supposed to end up in the Conference League and the Europa League. Though those competitions are not meant for a team like Chelsea. So therefore, playing in those competitions will never, ever, ever be good for us financially. Like, it will never be a net positive to be in those. I think the net positive is created by the intangibles, right? Of being able to continue your, title challenges. There's no way we challenge for a title next season, not with this many issues in the club. When I say title, I mean Premier League. So there are other cup tournaments that we can try and win. So that's, I think, the big bonus of playing in Europe, which we don't have. Now, I do, with these situations, it's like what's done is done. So now they have to make the best out of it. That's quite different to my usual brand of negativity. But at the end of the day, Alonso, he has to deal with what he's where the chips have fallen. So he will make the most of extra training sessions and extra time to build relationships with these players. But I've said this before, I don't even know what kind of squad he's going to end up with. And we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, whether it's just a change of title from head coach to manager that they've given him, but maybe they've still maintained a lot of the responsibilities, which they shouldn't. We can come on to Alonso later. There are a lot of questions around that. But yeah, I think it's a huge miss not playing it in Europe, just because this squad needs still more game time together, right? And they need to build that winning mentality. They need to understand that not every competition is like the Conference League, where you can play your second team and walk it. So I feel like the Europa League might have been more of a challenge because more teams like a Chelsea, I think they tend to fall into the Europa League. Not to mention, right? Ultimately, if we deserve to be there, we'd be there. The league, the table never lies. Like, honestly, we have been really bad all season. It comes back to what I asked you maybe like one or two podcasts ago, where I was like, was it worth it winning the Club World Cup? And yeah, we can come on to that now. I think, like, after winning the Club World Cup, I think overall we had positive, like, quite high expectations. So, how did the club do in your eyes relative to where we started the season and your predictions?
I mean, obviously the club did really, really poorly, right? But I will say that I still think the Club World Cup was worth it. And the reason I say that is, as much as you can say yes, fatigue and everything, right? I think a lot of it came down to just a complete lack of cohesion. Like the way Maresca left was it. I think that, like, obviously that's the moment where everything went downhill, and then them choosing to appoint Rosinia, and too many different identities, too many different things being tried, and a complete lack of cohesion. But a lot of the stuff that a lot of our results, um, you still look at our XG, for example. We scored 58, it was. We had an XG of 66, 67, right? So there has been a complete lack of underperformance across there as well. Um, Defensively, we've shipped way more goals than we were expected to, and especially under Rosinia's time, at least 8 or 9 more goals than we were expected to concede. And when you look at all of that data, it's as much as you can say yes, squad fatigue and everything, and Club World Cup has some impact. I'm not taking it away. I think there's more of an impact given the revolving door we have with the managers, and I think that really, really, really screwed us up. Like, and if we come to it, right, like, we wanted to talk about the managers and the way it went. It was, I mean, we basically had Maresca till Jan 1st, and I think the whole drop in form under him coincided with the news coming out that City had made contact, plus the Christmas period. I think in that whatever was happening internally in his head and all of that shit just completely let this slide. You had one game under McFarlane where you technically had 2 games where one was a draw versus City and one was a loss to Fulham, but because Rosinia had been appointed by the the loss to Fulham, it counts in Rosinia's tenure. And then with Rosinia, yeah, he gets an L for not actually being part of this thing. I actually had to verify this on multiple sources. I'm like, why is Rosinia getting one more game? But yeah, you had Rosinia for basically Jan, Feb, March, and like 3 months in like 2 weeks, 3.5 months. And in that time, I mean, like, what, we played 13 games, lost 7. And that's where things got really bad. Those 5 games at the end, like, you look at any of those games going our way, where it was like goals that, we hit the woodwork, or, we conceded really stoppily. We couldn't, like, click in front of goal. You look at any of those results going our way. And to me, it's really crazy. Like, I was thinking about this yesterday. Go back to November, and the conversation was, are Chelsea in the contention for a title? It's like, it's. I remember recording in November or mid-November or something. We actually had that conversation around that, and then fast forward to 6 weeks later, Maresca is out, and it's like a complete free fall. So I don't know if it's just down to because if it was down to the Club World Cup, I still don't think we would have been at that position. You know what I mean?
People need to stop bringing up whenever we're doing well, people need to stop bringing up that we could be title challengers, because it seems that whoever's manager and whoever's playing for us, they all seem to crumble under that kind of expectation. Oh, suddenly, we were second 12 weeks into the season, or 12 games into the season. And I mean, like, obviously, external pressure has its own tell, but I think what was more impactful was you get to that Christmas period and everybody's legs, they start to go, injuries start to pile up. And if I'm not mistaken, we lost Palmer for a fair chunk of those games as well, right? So it all kind of hit us around that Christmas time period, which, if you go back to the summer, right, most people were saying, yeah, Chelsea by Christmas period are going to be done. They're going to be finished legs wise. So from that perspective, I can't be too disappointed, right? Because we did expect it. What we didn't expect to see was such a tremendous drop off. Because, like I was saying, 12 games into the season, we're second. And then you're looking at a great bounce back, kind of 20, 21 games into the season. So around kind of 27 match weeks into the season, we're sitting on fifth, right? Champions League. And that's when it starts to tank. So this is the latter part of the season. This is actually where I had said, considering how many games we'll have played by this time, and the Champions League run and all of that, I was expecting round of 16. I was expecting March, April to be when we really start to trail off. And I do think, this lack of motivation we see is because it's just everyone's tired of playing, It's not the sole contributor. There are many contributors to this, but that is one aspect we have to keep in mind. So again, coming back to your question on, missing out on Europe, it's a huge upside to then say, okay, these players there is time to rest players in between games, as well as, train them, build better relationships between them. If we go, competition by competition, I went back, to our first part of the season. I had us finishing fifth. You had us finishing third. I think basically the difference in logic was you were more optimistic of a title challenge. I said we would still be there or thereabouts. I thought they would be a lot closer at the top. But we both had us bare minimum doing UCL. That's the biggest miss of the season. In terms of the other tournaments, I actually can't be too disappointed because, fine, we won the Club World Cup, but that was last season, right? Whatever. I said round of 16 proper, and we get knocked out. So I actually had us going into the kind of playoffs from the Champions League and then going to round of 16. They exceeded that expectation from my perspective, and then, lost to PSG, who are now in the final. So I can't be too, annoyed with that. And we knew legs would start to go, and, you sell João Felix and Kunku and all those guys, we were left with, very, very poor squad depth. I can't believe I'm saying that because we were complaining at one point that our squad was 40 players. The list was 40 players long. In the cups, exceeded my expectations slightly because I had us quarterfinals of FA Cup and semifinals of Carabao Cup. So we did semifinals of Carabao Cup and we hit the final of the FA Cup, lost to Man City, who have won both the cups this season. So in terms of the cup tournaments, I have no complaints. I actually think we had a good season for those tournaments. It's just how badly we've missed in the EPL. And that's where it's the most costly, right? Even like one position, as we've seen, 1 or 2 positions makes a massive difference to how you perceive the season. So yeah, since we're talking about season expectations, I can't be too disappointed in terms of the other competitions, but yeah, we fell way short in the Premier League, and that is leaving us in quite the predicament.
Yeah, no, if I recall correctly, because I didn't hear it back, I know I said third, like you said, for the Premier League. I remember saying quarterfinals for the Champions League, and I think I said we'll win one of the cups, at least one of the domestic cups, or at least get to the final of them. So in terms of the cups and the Champions League, yeah, you can say that, okay, there's, I think the reason I said quarterfinals was because I expected the competition to get much tougher by that stage. And getting PSG in the round of 16 was always going to be tough. They had something to prove. But yeah, man, the Premier League, I mean, you're looking at 14 wins, 10 draws in 38 games and 14 losses. That's like, man, that's just unforgivable, man. And like a goal difference, like we've shipped 52 goals in that period, like in that many games. I don't think you go back to like what was it? Uh Terry's and that defensive record that we had, was it 15 goals conceded in the season? Can you imagine that, like what we would need to do that in today's day with our defenders? Like, can you imagine? Like, it's crazy, man. And you're talking about like we're saying Alonso needs time to like, get the team playing and we get the squad, cohesion built. At this point, I don't know who's gonna be here next season. Like, it's crazy. It's a complete overhaul. So we're looking at a new manager, like you said. We have to discuss what that means. We're looking at new signings coming in. And in terms of new signings, like you they're saying they're giving him they're gonna give him more involvement. But at the same time, we've gone and signed Barco, or at least it's like a here we goes comfort for Fabrizio. And that's someone that was always linked to us, and it was always gonna be like, yeah, part of the model. So are we actually taking his input or no? Like I really don't know. And yeah, I mean, it's I think the overwhelming or the overall feeling or sentiment around this season is, yeah, fuck it, it's done. And as much as like Alonso is a huge appointment, unless we see some changes at the sporting director level, right, where there's five of them, I mean, sure, they may have clearly, demarcated responsibilities, but at the same time, something's not working in their setup. We're 4 seasons under Clear Lake, 4 full seasons. We haven't had a shirt sponsor. There's no movement on the stadium. Our average finishing position is like been around the 10th position in 4 seasons. So that's not a good place to be, right? So yeah.
I just wanted to add to that. I mean, these are some great points, man, because we have to zoom out and assess the project as a whole. With this season in particular, it just feels like one, it was a massive lost opportunity, right? Like you mentioned, also on the commercial side, but really, like we missed out on a huge opportunity to build and actually progress. Again, we can come on to stipulating why, but ultimately, right, we are where we are now, and that whole positive vibe that we had at the start of the season is just gone. And what has gone with that is trust, any lingering trust that was there at the start of the season, because, okay, they delivered on, okay, fine, trophy of Conference League. At least we won it, right? It's one of those things where we were expected to win and we met expectation. Club World Cup, no one expected us to win. We actually brought home the gold there. So that's fantastic. They've built some trust. They put some credit in the bank. That's all gone. So these guys can't sit there and say that, oh, okay, this project is going well. It's a successful project. I'm looking at it in terms of their perspective, right? They have to assess their own performance, right, within the project and their own contribution and the project as a whole. It's definitely behind schedule, which is going to cost them a lot of money, right? What I would like someone to do, somebody from the private equity field, is to actually say, hey, like, look, this was probably what they were looking at in terms of ROI, or ROE, whatever metric they're using at the start of the project, right? And then this is the value of the project right now because it's probably tanked, and this is how much they would have to put in and how much time it would take to actually get to the old estimation, you know? It's and I feel like that's probably a better angle to go at these leaders to make changes. People are suggesting, like, look, already giving Alonso that title change from head coach to manager is a sign of change. But for me, it's too late. Like, the trust is already gone. Uh, I don't see how they win it back. You know, like, so when you say we need to make the change, you know, at the sporting director level, I say, why stop there? You know, I wonder at what point the owners have to cut their losses. We're hopefully going to do this episode on the finances of the business and all in the future. Hopefully during this preseason. But what they cannot say is that this is a successful project or it's going to plan, right? The time for change has already come and gone. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, that's why all of the good vibes we had at the start of the season were done. We're gone. I can't imagine the last time we walked into a final, right? The FA Cup final. And I was thinking, like, hey mate, as long as we keep it tight and, you know, if we lose 1-0, then fine. We didn't get embarrassed in the final. We gave ourselves a chance. Whereas Chelsea of old could have been playing crap, but they still somehow managed to win the cup.
Yeah, man, you're right. Like, if you think about it before, it was always like, we're going to be in a final, we're going to win it. But I think it's what, 7 appearances at Wembley where we haven't won something. So the curse at Wembley is real, man. And there's some interesting points you talked about though that I want to touch on. So you talked about the sporting directors, right? And like, they should really assess themselves. Did you miss the news that they gave themselves pay bumps in this period? I think you missed that, right? Because you're talking about commercials and the valuation and the business
I
side.
definitely heard about it, but I've only, as in, it only came to me when I was doing research for this pod. So that seems to have gone under the radar.
It hasn't gone under the radar. I think there are a lot of people who are upset about that, which is why there were so many protests, right? Because it's like these guys are doing such a shit job of it, and then they're literally giving themselves a fucking pay bump at this point. Like how do you reward such mediocrity? You know, and it's unfortunate, but that's what it's come to, right? We're like a mediocre club. Talking about the ownership at large, I mean, you can say yes, maybe, you know, there's room for change, and I don't disagree with you. But at the same time, again, as part of that financial deep dive, there's that entire really long piece, right, which talked about how there's very strong exposure, which could lead to the ownership being diluted because of exposure from a loan perspective. And I mean, of course, I'm not a finance guy, so I'd probably have to defer to your business acumen to, you know, debug that a little bit. But it, I don't know if they're in a situation where they can actually sell and transfer ownership. And like we joked just yesterday, right? Like, this would probably be the best time. I bet we wish they could have bought the club now, right? Like, they wish, sorry, they could have bought the club now because the valuation's probably 10. So all in all, I mean, like, yeah, it's a low. And I think over the last 4 years since they've come in, it's always been like, how low can you go? And it turns out like lower, you know, so it's really, really bad. But I mean, I think there were some other things you wanted to cover as well, right? Before we talked about Alonso.
Well, I mean, you've just touched on one there, right? Like you said, it's the track record is 12th, 6th, 4th, and then now 10, right? But this one feels like a new low because we don't have the same attraction or attractiveness and financial strength as we did when they first walked into the building, right? So you said right at the top of the pod that it looks like we need an overhaul. That's absurd considering they've put in £2 billion. They've backed youngsters who by now some of them should really be, hitting their stride. But this is what happens when you gamble this way in football. It doesn't pay out. And now we're back. Now we're back where we started. But we don't have the same ability to maneuver. So for me, I would rank this as the ownership's worst season, actually, right? In that first season, getting rid of Tuchel was like,
Without a doubt. Yeah.
I mean, getting rid of Tuchel was probably the worst decision they've made of this entire thing, right? But and this is why I don't like to pile on to managers like Potter and Rosinha, because we can see what they're dealing with, right? In hindsight. So that 12th season, and it's kind of like a season of turmoil, a season of huge transition, but it hasn't actually gotten any better in terms of the transition. So that was the first point. I also just wanted to go back to some of the expectations I had at the start of the season. I think I had called out Reece James was going to have like a monumental season. He didn't do that. Now he had a better season than previous. And in terms of appearances, it feels like he's shown up more, but actually we're talking 38 games this season versus 32 the season before and 11 before that. So it's actually, it was not a huge jump. And again, if you look at that run of games where we were really bad, there's like, I'm talking about under Rosinha, right? There's no coincidence that, he was not on the pitch for any of those games, right? And you see him come on against Sunderland and his mentality is totally different to the rest of the team, to the point where he has to go to the bench and start bollocking at the substitutes to make sure when they're coming on, they're energized, like they're ready to go. You can see him doing the firing up. So for me, he's trying his best on the leadership side, but he missed the mark for me in terms of being our guy. It's still an improvement, but it's a minor improvement in terms of minutes on the pitch. I said João Pedro was going to be signing of the season. I think he is, without a doubt, signing of the season, and he's player of the season. So congratulations to him. There's a lot of suggestion that Chelsea are just trying to do whatever they can to keep him at the club, but I think he truly earned this, right? 20 goals in all competitions. This is a great first season, right? We didn't expect him to hit 20, so we would have taken 15. But hey, he's hit 20, and like the way he links up, the way he, has popped in some absolute bangers as well on his weaker left foot. The guy has like great range in his game. So it's now a question of how we build on it. It's now a question of how we retain him and then build on it. And lastly, my wild card or my wild shout at the start of the season was Andre Santos starting more games than Enzo Fernandez. Turns out Enzo Fernandez, aside from João Pedro, was probably our most critical midfielder, because you can say like Caicedo is world class. I'll back him as a 6 all day long. He could probably play as an 8 as well. But in terms of what we were lacking this season and going forward, Enzo was the guy. He tried his best to fill that gap. He tried to get in the box and support João Pedro. So, but I will say Santos has shown that once you play him next to Caicedo, it's like, oh, well, suddenly the gaps kind of start kind of getting shored up, We suddenly look a little bit more assured in transition and also in our rest defense. So there is a place in the squad for Santos. It's just not replacing Enzo. And I think, we'll come on to how Alonso potentially plays in a future pod, that I don't think Enzo can play as in the 6 for Alonso, just because of the intensity he's going to request the team to play with. So I did have a question for you. If you could pick out one moment in the season that was season defining in terms of how bad it's gotten, what would that be?
I will answer your question, but before I do that, um, we may not have that Enzo Fernandez, Andre Santos conundrum the way it's going. But you reminded me of the predictions we made, so I have to say I apologize for having Bo and Garnacho. Well, my prediction was definitely Premier League goals, and for sure, he did not even come close to winning a silver. He came in and I mean, I think everybody would rather see him leave at this point, and I think the dead weight at the club right now is insane. Um, and yeah, that's just really, yeah, I apologize. In terms of like make or break, I think Fafana for me has shown that there's no place for him at the club, honestly. I don't know if Alonso can change things around, but getting sent off for the second time this season yesterday was just ridiculous. Lavia as well. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh, but he's not really had a good season, and Cole Palmer as well. I don't think I factored in injury when I said player of the season. So, but yeah. In terms of Reese, one thing you mentioned you checked his appearances. Did you check minutes played? Because I feel like even though he may have had six more games in terms of appearances, it felt like he was more present this season than any of the last two.
I mean, even if he played all 90 minutes of all 38 games, it's not enough. Because, right, like, even if he did play the full 38 games, right, we missed him at crucial points in the season. And that's continuing to cost us season on season. We can only hope that next season, instead of 38, it then becomes 45, right? Or 50, you know? We actually may not even have 50, right? Depending on how we do on the domestic cups. But yeah, maybe next season is Reece James plays every Premier League game and every Premier League minute. And if he can hit that milestone, I think for me, he will be our most crucial player. We
But
miss
okay,
him so much.
before I answer your question at the top, I have a question for you. If you're saying Reece James plays that many games, where does he play them? Does he play them in midfield, like as a DMC, as he came on yesterday? Does he play them at right centre back, assuming Alonso wants to set up with a three, or does he play it at right wing back?
I again, if we're going into what Alonso might do, I think we're going to see him more at right centre back. This is more of a prediction. There is no doubt that if Reece James is fit, Alonso will pick him because he is the club captain, and you can see just the difference in mentality. The level of mentality that he has is what we need in every player in this team. So he will walk into that team, that first 11. In terms of where, yeah, I think right centre back. Just on the brief research I've done on Alonso's style, I don't think he has the legs to do the pressing in midfield. But we've seen that once he gets into a good defensive position, he can recover, right? He can then get his body in between himself and the attacker and either use his strength to see the ball out or put in a good tackle, or he usually does very well at just turning the ball around and the attackers kind of, past him. And then Reece James, he's good at then progressing the ball and carrying it out. So
Got it.
I don't think he has the legs for, the Leverkusen Frimpong role, for instance, but we don't know if that is the way Alonso is going to approach this.
Yeah, I just wanted to check with you. Okay. So coming to your question, what was the season defining moment for us? As much as I want to say it was Maresca leaving, I think it was Rosinia's appointment. I think that was more damaging than Maresca leaving because sure you have your coach who's set you up well, departing, but at that point in time you need to have a contingency plan. And if your contingency plan was just take somebody who has no Premier League experience, who has no real quality experience, who's done a decent job at your feeder club, but a lot of people could have told you seems out of depth for the role and you haven't explored anything else, and you brought that person in, I think that just shows woeful like underplanning. And for me, that was the moment because when Maresca left, We were still in what, fourth or fifth, and we had we had there was still potential, right? It's not that the season was done at that point. You could have got a better manager at that point of time, and we might not have been having this conversation. We might have had a cup. I don't know. We could have had a different result versus PSG as well. There's lots of what ifs, right? But for me, that's the moment. Well, what is it for you?
We were never beating PSG, man. They allowed it in the Club World Cup, but not in the Champions League, mate. Um, for me, it feels like an obvious one, but losing Colwell in that summer, that preseason, I think it was preseason, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it was preseason.
I think that was what was defining everything beyond that, because firstly, it was clear that it was going to disrupt the way we played. So tactically, on the ball, we had to change, right? Because no one was going to fill that gap on the ball. But it turns out he was actually also our best defender, which I'm not sure I would have agreed with that last season, right? And at the start of the season. But hindsight and the results show us that he actually was our best defender, because when he wasn't there, it all turned to shit. And then, okay, so that's like the football, right? Then you had the manager come out and say, this is a big deal. But, and this is a huge signal, right? Again, all in hindsight. The ownership thinks or thought at that time they knew better. And it turns out they were totally wrong, right? It,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like you mentioned, you take your season defining moment and you say, if it goes differently, you can wonder, you can speculate how things look. Maybe it's not really like progressive thought process, but I really do wonder, had we brought in someone as capable as Colwell, and there are definitely centre back options out there who could have come in and at least shored us up defensively at the bare minimum, right? How how different our season would have looked. And I do wonder Maresca would still be in the job if he had just gotten what he wanted.
You never know. I think the pull of City though was too much, and I think they had the succession plan all along. So if he hadn't left in Jan, he would have probably left by now. But then all the encounters that we had with City, I don't know. I think there was too much of a conflict, which is why he probably chose to. But yeah, you're right. You never know, right? That is a big moment for sure. The Colwell injury and not getting the right replacement. So yeah, I mean, I think we just got to look forward now. There's a lot to actually look forward to. There's a lot to unpack for us in the next couple of weeks, right? We're definitely looking at, like a deeper dive into the season and more of what to expect under Alonso. But right now, like where you are, what at least, off the top of your head, what's your bare minimum expectation? What are you, hoping to see under Alonso?
I think straight off the bat, we need to concede less goals, and we need to look like we have a defensive approach, a coherent defensive approach. It may not work immediately, but we need a manager who also is going to stick to his guns, like Maresca did, in calling out the Colwell injury as being a very big issue and needing to be addressed, right? We need somebody who knows what they're trying to do and knows that it's going to work. So, and for me, that the first place I would address is a defense. I have no expectations beyond that, right? If he sorts out the defense, we immediately perform better and we get better results. That will turn into confidence, and then you will see our confidence players go forward and attack better as a result. So that's actually a great question. I'm gonna hit you with a slightly different one, right? How do you think, or how would you define success under Alonso? And you can take it from your perspective, or maybe you can look at it from Alonso's perspective. he's taken a very risky job where there's so many obvious things that need to change, and the changes need to happen at the level above him and the level above that as well. It can't just be done by him. So what do you think he defines as success?
Well, what do I think Alonso would define as success? I think if he's able to keep his job for longer than 2 seasons, it's success for him. um, because no, honestly, these guys have shown they're really trigger happy when results aren't going their way, contrary to what they said coming in. And honestly, I think that you said there has to be change above him and above that as well. I don't think there's too much change going to happen there. I think he's going to have to work within these conditions. They're saying they're going to give him more freedom, or more, input on things, which is reflected in the title. I don't know, there is a very cynical part of me that's saying that rushing Alonso, and I say rushing because they move very fast, right? They had it wrapped up, not even in June, in May, right? Having it done so quickly, and giving him the managerial title could just be nothing more than just a move to quell the protests and say, okay, we've done something. Because there was a massive protest that was organized, and after Alonso was announced, they actually they called off that protest, saying, we have seen some positives because of the Xabi Alonso announcement. So I don't know if it was just a move, a calculated move in that sense. And we'll have to see how the window goes. Because for me, given where we are with the squad, given it's a World Cup year, and now that we have a new manager, I'm expecting moves. I think I don't know if I told you this or I called it on the last squad or whatever it was, but I'm expecting moves like that window when we signed Fabregas. It was all done before the World Cup started in June. We didn't leave any business for the end of it, and that's the kind of movement we're going to need if they're showing that there is intent. And if in that intent, as much as I don't want to lose players, if certain players are saying they don't see their futures yet, right? And biggest culprit there, Enzo Fernandez. But this also covers the likes of Cucurella, it covers the likes of João Pedro. If João Pedro feels like Barcelona is a better fit for him because that's where he's linked with right now, and if he feels that, then I don't know, I don't know how to react to that. But if that's the case, then we need to move quickly and, decisively to sort of um address those things and move forward. You know what I mean? I
But
don't think we have the
dude, like two things on what you're saying, right? First thing is you need to have money in the bank to do that. But the question is, do they need to sell to buy?
they need to sell a
Considering,
lot, yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
This
So
is
now anybody who knows Chelsea's position, and that will be the entire market, right, will know that they can basically control negotiations around player valuations. And they are like, the buyers don't have to buy straight away. They can drag it out till after the World Cup, right?
yeah, they're all distress signals basically is what you're saying.
Yeah. So that means there's nothing in the coffers up front. Again, we haven't looked in detail at the books, and what we're saying is just a potential eventuality, but it can't be very, very liquid right now. It's probably very tight. And if they don't have any sales lined up in the immediacy, how are they going to execute on, like you say, what the plan you've suggested makes absolute sense. Alonso goes into the market with specific targets. If he gets them, great. If he doesn't, maybe he has a priority list, or that's it. Just close the shop, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm not sure in reality how feasible that is. The other thing, like coming back to your answer to my question, how does he keep his job for at least 2 years? Is he saying like, okay, getting back into the Champions League in season 2 is good enough? I'm going to need at least one season to turn the ship around. It could end up in like a Europa League or whatever it is. What do you think he's, speculating or like aiming for in that 1 or 2 seasons, like you say, that they're really assessing?
I don't want to be so I don't want to stick my neck out at this stage because I really want to deep dive a little bit more into Alonso, to be honest. But I think at the bare minimum, you're looking at a Champions League place finish in the first season itself. Because, like you said, we're a Champions League run club. We can't afford to be out of it for 2 seasons. Or at the very least, the European competition. But for me, it's a Champions League, and I think again with the quality of squad that we have currently, and even if we lose a couple of these players that I've talked about, it's still not that the quality of the squad is not enough to push for a domestic cup and push for a Champions League spot, finish. So I think that will be the bare minimum, in my book at least. But like I said, let's save this for a deep dive because I think there's a lot that we're gonna unpack from a tactical perspective as well, and looking at the squad we have. And I'm sure in the next couple of weeks we're gonna see a lot of potential transfers out. And like you said, we need to sell to buy. And in terms of that, I would say the way these guys have run this club, they've given themselves freaking pay hikes. Now just cut your losses. If you're selling a player at a loss, do it. Get rid of the dead weight. Get rid of the players who don't have a future. And make sure money moves. It's not one sporting director. It's not two. It's 5 people. They should be between themselves able to at least negotiate a good deal. We had Marina cutting checks left, right, and center, selling David Luiz for 50 million when we didn't need him. These guys need to pull off that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
I mean, there have been some good moves, like some good sales in there. But yeah, it's not enough to justify a raise. And the youngsters they've bought clearly are not ready to play for Chelsea. So, like you say, we'll pick it up in a future pod. Maybe what we think Alonso's expectations are, and I guess we can set our own expectations closer to the season. But it's a very, very tricky situation right now. And they've also kind of used all the aces up their sleeves with, selling the women's club and the hotels. And now they also have to do everything in good faith because there's so much scrutiny on the books at the club from the Premier League and from UEFA that, all of these kind of loophole moves, they can still get penalized for it off the books, with having bad relationships with these regulatory bodies. So it remains to be seen how all of that financial management goes, and then obviously we'll try and keep you guys posted as to how things pan out. Actually, I was gonna ask you for final thoughts, but I realized I haven't shared my thoughts on the Alonso appointment itself.
Yeah, bro.
I was actually quite negative, which surprise, right? Of course. But when I searched my feelings, I realized they weren't directed at Alonso, right? He did to be invincibles in Germany, which is one of the top 5 leagues in Europe, and your team was not Bayern Munich. I mean, that's insane, right? Absolutely insane. And he will always have that credit in the bank. And we know, I think we all are in the football universe, right? So we know what's good, kind of vaguely going on at Real Madrid. It's definitely not an easy group of players to manage. So, yeah, I think for me, my reservations with him personally were, like you said at the top of the pod, you're hiring a manager who's not managed in the Premier League. He's still a relatively inexperienced manager. I think it's a handful of seasons managing at the top level, right? And again, are we going for a systems coach, right? That last one we will see. The word on the street is not necessarily. He has a few principles that he sticks to, but he's not so wedded to a certain formation, let's say. So there is that versatility there, which is good, but it remains to be seen. So those are my reservations with him personally. But the rest of the negativity in my head was just driven by the lack of trust I have in the whole system. And I don't know which manager they could have appointed that actually would have appeased me in any way or given me a slightly more positive reaction. And then also you got to be like, okay, well, who can Chelsea realistically get? I don't even think I'd put Alonso as realistically gettable, right? So the truth is, there's just a lot of distrust with the ownership and their directors, and it all comes back to, well, they have created this system in which everybody is failing. So why would it change with Alonso? And that's where my negative reaction was coming from. And I think it's up to them to like publicly demonstrate that they are actually planning to change their ways. And I guess if you're an optimist, you look at that head coach to manager title change as like, a potential, change it for the better. But yeah, just that was just my 2 cents on the full thing. Um, I'm fully behind the guy, but if it doesn't work out, I won't be surprised.
No, fair enough. I think I looked at it more from like, yeah, the person, the individual himself. Like, you're already seeing like a lot of players have come out talking about he was an elite player. And I think the problem with Rosinia, the biggest problem with the Rosinia appointment was he could not command the respect of the players. He had nothing to fall back on. Alonso, all of these guys have seen him play for Liverpool, for Madrid. They've seen his accolades. They know the guy. He's a recognizable name, and I think that makes a world of difference. So, hopefully it's better times ahead, and um, we're gonna have our work cut out for us, right, over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, if you've made it this far, look out for positional deep dives, a tactical deep dive into Alonso. So you definitely want to be subscribed to get notified of when those episodes drop. Give us a follow on Twitter. I'm on X, we weren't Lou. And I have to say, Sharon, we both dropped the ball on FPL. So hopefully next season we can get that ball, you know, up and running. You can actually manage the squad that you set out to. Eh?
Hey, no promises from my end. All right. We'll see. Honestly, if the season's going all right, I kind of like flick open the app and it's interesting. But once they announced that on New Year's Day that Maresca was going, I was like, maybe FPL isn't that important.
Okay, well, fair enough. But yeah, on that note, yeah, I want to say keep the blue flag flying high, but it's flying pretty low. So we'll see you guys on the next one.